Welcome to the Business of Travel, the official podcast of the Global Business Travel Association. I'm Katie Virtue, Chair of the GBTA Technology Committee, and I'll be your host for today's episode. I'm joined today by Romain, CEO at Jack and Ferdi, and Josh, Global Head of Product Marketing at CTM. Today, we're talking about technology solutions that can help take care of travelers. Welcome, Romain and Josh. Can you both please introduce yourselves and share one thing that you do when traveling to take care of yourself? Josh, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Katie. And thank you also for the opportunity to join the podcast and talk about traveler wellbeing, something that I've been passionately posting about on LinkedIn for a few years now and trying to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. So thank you for letting me be here. For me, when I'm traveling, the number one thing that I do is make sure that I've got music tied to different elements of my trip. So my go-to when I'm in a busy, stressful airport is peaceful, calming, relaxing music from someone like Ludovic Einaudi. To me, it transforms like the whole airport experience if you've got something going on. And if you're traveling alone, it's just a nice way to break up what can be a little bit monotonous.
Great. Thank you, Josh. I love that. All right. So some good music for you. And so probably certainly also some good headphones.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Romain, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you do when traveling to take care of yourself?
Well, thank you, Katie. It's great to be on the show. What I've been doing, what's been working for me in terms of well-being, is to include two components within the trip. First of all, is to take care of myself through meditation and exercise. Usually, I try to find a great place to do that, not necessarily staying in a hotel. And then the second thing is I absolutely want to engage with the local culture. And my go-to is usually street food, which is a great way to engage with the local culture, discover great restaurants. And I'd love to bring back a recipe when I'm back home to share with my family.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. Favorite street food you've had while traveling?
Favorite street food would be wow, so many options, but I would say in the biryani in Mumbai, there are some amazing places where you can find on the spot top quality biryani, which is a very heartwarming food that you can enjoy during half an hour, 40 minutes. Makes you feel good.
All right. Well, now that we have everyone who's listening hungry, we'll dive more into our topics for today. So from the technology committee standpoint, we thought it would be great to talk about the topic of well-being because it is so prevalent. We'll talk about the definition of it and how that's changed and morphed. And I think we've seen some differences post-pandemic. And really here, what are some of the trends that you both are seeing and how technology is coming into play? One of our fellow committees, the GBTA Risk Committee, they actually shared in their recent trends that traveler well-being should be at the forefront of all risk programs. And that's been a shift that they've seen post-pandemic. So it's this interesting concept now of care and how that's all encompassing with well-being and safety. So thinking about actually that definition, Josh, let's start by kind of defining what well-being means in relation to business travel, because it seems like there are a lot of perceptions out there.
Yes, and I'm really glad that you mentioned the link between well-being and duty of care, because that has changed, and we are seeing customers talk about the shift there. But I think it helps to start by defining what traveler well-being is not. It's a little bit easier to do that first. And I would say that traveler well-being is not necessarily spas and massages, five-star accommodation, champagne receptions, being always in first or business class. It's not those necessary things, and it is really easier to define it as, is the traveler, or are my travelers in the right both physical and mental state to perform at their best while traveling and after they travel? Because it's not worth putting everything into a trip and then it completely burns somebody out and they come back to work the week later at home, or they get back to their family and they're completely kind of broken from a really intense trip. So it has to be beyond the trip itself, but it's really that combination of, are they in the right physical and mental state to perform at their best, which you can make the link between business travelers and professional sports athletes. We have a lot of sports organizations teams that we support, and we do both their business and team travel, and they are at the top end of the spectrum in terms of the steps that they take in terms of pre-preparation planning to make sure that they are really performing at their absolute best for any game or tournament, and that is starting to bleed through into corporate travel programs. And if you've got these really, really important people within your business, making sure that really, can they perform at their best when they go into a high pressure environment, or if they go in to present at a giant conference or trade show, they need to be at the top of their game, and they need to be able to do that continuously afterwards, not just every 3 or 4 months when they have a big trip coming up.
Yeah, and I love how you started with what it's not in terms of the definition, especially because I think a good thing we've seen is during the pandemic, and then in the couple of years, following, a lot more programs asking their travelers how they would define it, what they want in terms of well-being. Because to your point, Josh, I think previously it was maybe thought more in terms of some physical needs, exercise, access to a gym, but there's so many more components now. And I think you stated it perfectly around kind of that physical, mental performance. So having that definition in mind, and all of these other components that have come into play, Roman, what are you seeing though are some of the challenges, especially in today's environment with travelers, when it comes to this idea of well-being, of physical, mental performance, and when they're traveling?
Yeah, so we're tracking data about we've been tracking data for about 10 years, in this space, and ever since Harvard Business Review published in 2015 a paper, showing the traditional, negative aspects and impacts on travelers' well-being. We've seen a bevy of studies and survey expanding on those. So you're still seeing, I would say, the usual suspects, from sleep disorder to physical discomfort, sleep disturbances, and dietary challenges. These are especially prevalent with road warriors that are really struggling to handle those fundamentals of well-being. But you're also seeing from the employer's point of view some impact on excess of what I would call negative, business travel, with some absenteeism, higher healthcare costs, some burnout directly related to business travel, and generally some potential, reduced engagement for the job. And going back to what Josh was saying and about the new definitions of well-being, we've noticed also that the new generation expects more from a business travel. And that's very true in many dimensions. And we've seen a well-being definition that is really sprawling, that young people now say that they are concerned about their own impact, on the planet, for example, in the hotel they choose, or the type of air travel or ground travel that they have to go through. They also want to engage locally. We often see in the data that some young business travelers want to volunteer locally, which can be a real challenge in terms of duty of care, right? They want to shop responsibly as well, at destination. So all of these new elements are making the definition, incredibly richer and more complex to handle from an employer's perspective.
And you started to mention, some of the data that you've seen. Obviously, number of reports and studies out there. Is there also data that you've been collecting on travel well-being that is kind of showing some further trends?
Yeah, we've so we try to monitor really the impact of our technology, and Jack and Ferdi is a benefit corporation, which means that we really evaluate our success on the impact, or at least in the increased well-being that we're trying to generate through our technology. And so we have monitors. We've made several pilots with employers whose well-being has been top of their mind. And so we asked ourselves the question, what if we were to empower business traveler with two things, with the possibility to take care of themselves, and the possibility to make the business travel a personal growth opportunity. And what's the results on their well-being, their happiness, and what's the results from the employer's perspective? And so we've graded their trips from A to E, A being the highest grade, meaning that they were able to infuse their business travel with many well-being components, many well-being elements into it. And D, E, and F are the trips where unfortunately travelers were not able at all, or didn't have any intent to take care of their well-being or take care of their growth at destination. And what we found invariably through our studies is that the more they had well-being moments, the more they had well-being components included in their trips, the more travelers tended to say that they had a satisfying work-life balance during the trip. Conversely, we found that poorly well-being focused trips tended to lead travelers to notice no improvements or in fact a decrease in their life balance during their trip. There were those that had great grades like A and B pluses, tended to report they were happy upon return. They were more likely to report greater performance at work during their 2 to 3 weeks upon their return. And interestingly, a lot of those in that group that did well claimed that they were able to develop personally during the trip, right? And which was amazing to see. And from the employer standpoint, we try to we also ask them, what are you seeing for those two groups that we isolated, though that did well, so the A and B plus people, and those that were in the D and E group. They've shown also a decrease in absenteeism, which was significant. Upon return, during the 2 months following an intense sequence of business travel, a drop by about a third of lost days at work and absenteeism, and also a reduction in terms of sick days by about 40%. So I mean, we thought that the data was very encouraging, that even a moderate trip in terms of well-being, like a trip that includes maybe one sequence of well-being, maybe just a run or a meditation can have significant impact on the satisfaction on the business traveler. So we think that it's a high return proposition for employer and business travel out there, just to focus or to have the strategic intent to take care of yourself and to have the ambition to grow personally usually goes a long way.
Yeah, those definitely sound like some very powerful indicators of how well-being can positively impact the person, the company, and their travel. And I love the fact that you're asking about personal growth, because sometimes we're so intent on what's the monetary, return of travel. How is it, lending to sales or profit or whatnot? But the personal growth element's so key, especially for so many organizations who are saying they want to be purposeful, take care of their employees. We're seeing that broader shift. I love the point on personal growth. Josh, in terms of, some trends, I know you have some analytics that you've applied to travel well-being, and what are you seeing from that, data?
Yeah, sure. So for a number of years now, we've provided customers with, alongside their kind of traditional reporting and analytics on what do they spend on travel, what are the booking patterns and behaviors, we've dedicated resources to just looking at well-being within their travel program. So that covers everything from the amount of travel that people are doing, but also things like what we call the intensity of a trip, which is a combination of how long are they in the air or how long are they away from home, and what is the class of travel. So traveling economy for 9-10 hours, not great, especially if you're expected to get off that plane and go straight into a meeting. But other things within that, so factors like how many overnight flights, how many times are people traveling during their personal time, whether that's evenings or weekends, things like that all play a part in absenteeism, lack of engagement with, having to travel for work and having to perform. So we've been providing that data to customers in dashboards for a number of years now. But more recently, what we've started to do is we know that these are all negative factors that can detract from someone's well-being. What we've done is we've added some other calculations and metrics behind the scenes to that, which can include also things like how close to the trip did someone actually book their flights and their hotel, because we know that the closer you get to traveling, before you've got everything taken care of, the stress mounts up, you have less time for planning and preparation. So there's these and a number of other things that impact on what we call a well-being score for a traveler, which is from 1 to 100, made up of 7 different factors predominantly, and some sub factors within those, that we will do calculations, and we surface that to department heads, managers, travel program leaders, so they can see, is this person fit to travel? Should they be traveling? And that looks at a 90-day window, and we give them a color-coded heart score from red, amber through to green, based on that 1 to 100 score that we used behind the scenes. And that's been really insightful for a lot of our customers, and the feedback has been really interesting. I wouldn't say it's been wholly positive though, because it's a little bit polarizing. There are some companies that have said, we don't need to see this, we don't necessarily want to discourage people from traveling, or we can't say this person can't travel. But then a lot of other organizations saying, yes, we really do need to see this, and our line managers of our travelers need to know, yes, you might not realize, but this person has been on the road 5-6 times in the last 3 weeks. So that's been really, really eye-opening to see what kind of companies. I think the shift that not necessarily the shift, but the breakdown of where we see the differences in how hungry companies are for these kind of analytics in their travel program is, are they in the industry in particular? So seeing professional services, technology, service-based businesses, there's more of a demand for this. So you think consultancies as well, more interest in this data than perhaps agriculture, manufacturing, other fields where there is perhaps more of an old school attitude of, you've just got to get the job done. You've got to travel. There is a critical work that needs to happen on this pipeline or whatever it is. And we can't adapt the travel program too much to the individual needs of the traveler. But other companies have a lot more flexibility with that. And I think it was really interesting to see Romain talking about the different factors within a trip. At the moment at CTM, we're very much looking at what are the detractors to somebody's well-being, but there's the flip side to that is, well, if you can minimize the detractors and add the positives, then you get to a far better outcome for everybody. So maybe at some point we should look at how we can work together on that. But for us, it's been really interesting to see the feedback from customers and to see which people within their organizations they want this data to be available to. Nobody approaches it in the same way. But we're used to that. No travel program is the same. So we've got some other plans that we want to move forward, and how do we integrate that into the actual booking and planning process of a trip. We're doing things more around if somebody is traveling for a certain amount. I mean, if you take a domestic trip, for example, where somebody spending a lot of time on trains, whether that's in UK, Europe, or elsewhere, could this person actually, over a certain number of hours, should they travel the day before and take an overnight hotel so that they're there ready, fresh in the morning, and putting just a little in-app message to recommend that to a person, depending on the travel policy and things like that. And you can also actually, if you travel, I don't want to get too far into the details of domestic train journeys in the UK because it's challenging at the moment with the number of strikes that we have. But you can also save money. So it doesn't necessarily have to come at additional cost to the employer. Traveling off peak and having a hotel included can actually be cheaper than doing a there and back return on the same day. So it doesn't have to be one offsetting the other. It can be a win-win for both the traveler and the employer.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah. So it sounds like both of you are doing some type of grading, scoring, using different components and elements to assess trips. And as you said, really interesting to see kind of some of which types of companies are adopting it or not. I'm sure there's definitely a cultural aspect that plays into that. But I love that there's the approach to give it to the manager, because they're going to really be the ones to help drive some of that change for their people who are the ones traveling. I think it's also, apparent, and obviously this is a big focus for this discussion, is how technology is enabling a lot of this, to be able to capture information, or to, as you said, Josh, take that information and hopefully utilize it for planning trips and other elements. So thinking about technology and how it's helping people to take care. Josh, can you describe, the technology that you have, how it's being used by companies? I know you shared some on obviously the data piece, but a little more on the technology.
Yeah, sure. So the way we build things is that we're pretty much kind of end-to-end setup. So we build everything kind of proprietary through from the booking through to data management and everything in between. So we can pull different bits of data out and put them back into the booking process or the travel management architecture. We can take that from what might be a disparate third-party system in other programs, and we can resurface that information in a different way. So the traveler scoring, we actually show that when you log into CTM, our portal, where you've got all of your tools depending on which role you are within, how we structure that. So as a travel manager, you might be prompted, you can see the high-level reports, the dashboards around, okay, at a program level, here are my top travelers who are possibly at risk, or here are the ones doing the most of this high intensity travel. But if I'm a line manager, or if I am or an individual traveler, or somebody who books travel and arranges that on behalf of a small group of people, when I log into the same portal, my experience is going to be different. And I'm going to see that scoring of, here are the travelers that I'm either responsible for or I book travel for, so that I can make an informed decision, because the point of value for each user is going to be different. And so that's what we want to make as easy as possible, is what decisions do people need to make, and what data do they need to help make those decisions quicker? And it's not going to be the same decisions for those different roles. So we try and personalize the experience, and this is completely separate to just the booking experience. That's a whole nother level of personalization. But there's all these things that go into pre-planning and before you get to the stage of what do I book for this person or for myself. So splitting that out between at a program level, where as a travel manager might I want to make some strategic changes, collaborate with HR on how do we adjust the travel policy at a macro level, and then how do you support the line managers and individual travelers who are making those day in day out decisions on, do I extend my trip by an extra day, or do I take an overnight flight, and all of those different things. So that's how we tend to think about it, is the technology needs to serve different audiences. It shouldn't be one size fits all. And everybody has to try and figure out, get the data out of one platform. It's like, no, we'll do the hard work for you, so you can just make a judgment call based on what you see when you open up CTM.
Yeah, that's great, especially in the world today. I think we hear a lot about personalization, flexibility, customized, and I love that is through technology that's surfacing the ability, as you said, for people to make decisions around their well-being.
Yeah, it can't no longer be just nice to have. It's like, okay, those are some useful metrics, and like I'll put it in my back pocket and then maybe forget about it a month from now. Right. It needs to be actionable, and so that's why all of these different factors that go into a score individually, they're nice to know, but until you aggregate that into a score that someone can holistically look and say, yeah, this person probably needs a break from travel, or actually no, they're good to go. So that's what we want to do, is just shorten the amount of mental effort and load that someone has to take to make those decisions.
Yeah. Okay, and then Roman, on your side, your tool definitely comes into play more when they're planning, but also on trip, and kind of a combination of improving the experience along with well-being. Can you talk more about your technology and how that's utilized for taking care?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we aim at Jack and Ferdi to generally to change the perception of business traveler. We think that it does not have to be something you endure. You don't need to suffer. Instead, we are proposing to embrace business travel and to make it a personal growth opportunity, a moment that is not negative for you and your well-being, but actually a net positive for you and your personal development. So what we've done is we've developed with clinical psychologists and travel medicine specialists, a business travel well-being framework that is founded on the 6 pillars of modern day well-being, including, self-esteem, having a life with purpose, personal growth, being independent, and the ability to engage with others, right? So we're trying to cover the 6 pillars in the technology that we're offering. So to be very concrete, our tool is a well-being travel guide, right? Covering more than 200 cities across all continents, specifically designed for professionals that are time-starved, right? So we're not talking about traditional tourists. We're talking about business travel that have only pockets of free time here and there between 2 meetings, between a conference and a meeting, between a conference and their plane back home. And the key in digging for the right content for business traveler that are pressed for time is really to focus on personalized recommendations, because we're all different. As we said initially, our own definitions of well-being might be different. Katie, you might like to go for a jog. I might like to meditate. Josh might want to listen to his music. Recommendations need to be actionable, right? So we don't want to send you on a 3-day hike, even though it might be beautiful. But what can you do in an hour, in 2 hours, that are going to, a thing that is going to be beneficial to you? And then we also try to localize as much as we can our recommendations. We love for the business traveler to really be in sync with the most important cultural contributions that the city has to offer. Having said that, our 2 most popular features in the travel guide revolve around self-care and personal growth. Self-care really shows that, it reduces anxiety, it improves cognitive function. And so we have a series of categories for that. Meditation is extremely popular. Really improve your mood, improve your long-term memory. It's really, really game-changing. Jogging itineraries, healthy tips. I was talking about the biryani in India, but actually there's a lot of healthy tips that are very localized, that enables you to engage with the local culture, and that are also benefiting to you. So masala chai tea, for example, is one of the secrets of health, of well-being in India that you can discover while you're at destinations. So a lot of healthy tips at destinations that you might be able to enjoy. And then the other section is the personal growth. And what we found time and again in all our surveys is that business travelers feel bad when they come back empty-handed. They went out, they came back in, and then they sit at the dinner table. Oh, what did you learn? What did you discover? And we found that it's a little devastating for those travelers that are come back empty-handed. So you don't want to do that. And we really are empowering travelers to come back with a meaningful experience, with a story, with fun facts, with a music playlist, with a souvenir, which you can share around the dinner table when you're back home, right? So having a team lunch, for example, at a cultural landmark can help you, satisfy your professional obligations, but also for you and your group or your clients or your suppliers, your teammates, it's also the ability to discover, the local culture, something to use as an icebreaker in your conversation, and a souvenir you can share, back home, right? So we're content focused, and we're trying to uncover a content that is actionable, really impactful for your well-being and your personal growth, and delivering it at the right moment, either before the trip, if you're able to plan ahead, which I encourage every business traveler to do, or at destination, on the spot, on the fly. There's a ton of content that you can consume within 5 minutes, 10 minutes in a taxi between two meetings, or during a business lunch, for example.
Thank you, Romain, for that overview on the technology, and to your point about how it fits in so well with usually busy travelers, but just grabbing those potential pockets of time, and what even a simple hour can do for someone. Well, thank you both, Romain and Josh, for talking about this critical topic of well-being and these technology solutions that are out there, which I think are really finally bringing some solutions, decisions, capabilities to travel managers and travelers, which I know people have definitely been looking for. You've been listening to The Business of Travel, the official podcast of the Global Business Travel Association. If you know of any other technology solutions that are also taking care of travelers, please definitely share them with the Technology Committee, as we're always wanting to learn more. For more information about GBTA and its work, visit gbta.org, and be sure to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, thank you for listening, and thank you again, Josh and Romain.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.